24 of the Gospel of Luke, beginning with verse 13. This is on the same day that the disciples of Jesus had found his tomb empty and were dismayed and alarmed and had received a message and a vision of angels telling them that indeed Christ had been raised from the dead. And we pick up on that same day, the third day, in chapter 24 here, verse 13. Now, on that same day, two of them were going to a village called Emmaus, about 7 miles from Jerusalem, and talking with each other about all these things that had happened. And while they were talking and discussing, Jesus himself came near and went with them. But their eyes were kept from recognizing him. And he said to them, "What are you discussing with each other while you walk along the way?" They stood still, looking sad. Then one of them said, whose name was Cleopas, answered him, "Are you the only stranger in Jerusalem who does not know these things that have happened, that have taken place there in these days?" He asked them, "What things?" They replied, "The things about Jesus of Nazareth, who was a prophet, mighty in deed and word before God and all the people, and how our chief priests and leaders handed him over to be condemned to death and crucified him. But we had hoped that he was the one to redeem Israel. Yes, and besides all this, it is now the third day since these things took place. Moreover, some of the women of our group astounded us. They were at the tomb early this morning, and when they did not find his body there, they came back and told us that they had indeed seen a vision of angels who said that he was alive. Some of those who were with us went to the tomb and found it just as the women had said, but they did not see him." Then he said to them, "Oh, how foolish you are, and how slow of heart to believe all that the prophets have declared. Was it not necessary that the Messiah should suffer these things and then enter into his glory?" Then beginning with Moses and all of the prophets, he interprets to them the things about himself in all the Scriptures. As they came near the village to which they were going, he walked ahead as if he were going on, but they urged him strongly, saying, "Stay with us, because it is almost evening, and the day is now nearly over." So he went in to stay with them. And when he was at the table with them, he took bread, and he blessed it, and he broke it, and he gave it to them. And then their eyes were opened, and they recognized him. And he vanished from their sight. They said to each other, "Were not our hearts burning within us while he was talking to us on the road, while he was opening the Scriptures to us?" That same hour they got up and returned to Jerusalem, and they found the 11 and their companions gathered together, and they were saying, "The Lord has arisen indeed, and he has appeared to Simon." Then they told what had happened on the road, and how he had been made known to them in the breaking of bread. While they were talking about this, Jesus himself stood among them and said to them, "Peace be with you." They were startled and terrified and thought that they were seeing a ghost. And he said to them, "Why are you frightened, and why do doubts arise in your hearts? Look at my hands and my feet. See that it is I myself. Touch me and see, for a ghost does not have flesh and bones, as you see that I have." And when he said this, he showed them his hands and his feet. While in their joy they were disbelieving and still wondering, he said to them, "Have you anything here to eat?" They gave him a piece of broiled fish, and he took it and he ate it in their presence. And then he said to them, "These are my words that I spoke to you while I was still with you, that everything written about me in the law of Moses and the prophets and the Psalms must be fulfilled." Then he opened their minds to understand the Scriptures, and he said to them, "Thus it is written that the Messiah is to suffer and to rise from the dead on the third day, and that repentance and forgiveness is to be proclaimed in his name to all nations, beginning from Jerusalem. You are witnesses of these things. And see, I am sending upon you what my Father promised. So stay here in the city until you have been clothed with power from on high. The Word of God. For us, the people of God. Thanks be to God. Thanks be to God. I was on my way into Wallace Wade Stadium to go to a football game at Duke University in 2009 in the fall. And as I was walking into Wallace Wade Stadium, I walked right by this group of people who were huddled together around this fairly tall individual, and I looked over, and I kept walking, and I looked again, and I was about as close as I am to you all right here. And I did a double take. And I said, that looks like Steve Spurrier, who's the head ball coach at South Carolina for Gamecocks right now. Used to coach at the University of Florida, had won a national championship with them. And was a pretty good quarterback himself in his day. Went on to coach the Redskins. That didn't work out too good, so he came back to Gamecocks in South Carolina. Got any Gamecock? I know we got at least 2 Gamecock fans here. 2 Gamecocks. So I did a double take, and I said, that looks like Steve Spurrier, but it's in the middle of football season. I know he's the coach at South Carolina, and I said, I can't. Kept on walking. Even said to a friend, I said, that guy looked like Steve Spurrier. He said, he looked back and said, I can't be him. So we walked on into the stadium. And as we got together to sit down and we were getting ready for the game, they made an announcement over the intercom or the loudspeakers that they were going to be honoring the 1989 Duke football team that had won the ACC championship that year. And guess who their coach was that year? Now you know Steve Spurrier was coach, but you know that dude had to be a good coach. If he took the Duke Blue Devil football team to the ACC championship, I mean, my goodness. Now that's a miracle work. Is it? I mean, really. I'm a Duke guy, but I mean, that's a miracle work. He's a good ball coach. So I saw what I thought was Steve Spurrier, then I heard that they're honoring his team, and Steve Spurrier was that coach. And I thought, maybe. Still wasn't sure, because they probably got a game today. He couldn't have been here. Well, apparently they had planned it well enough, because sure enough, he came out there later at halftime. He came out there with it on the field and was recognized and stood and waved to the crowd. Indeed, it was Steve Spurrier. I put 2 and 2 together. It was Steve Spurrier. Similarly, I was standing there on the front row at Cameron Indoor Stadium in the graduate student section, getting ready for the Miami and Duke basketball game a couple of years, 3 years ago. And we actually lost that game, by the way. But anyway, now with Carolina Crimson, yes. But anyway, I looked over into the seats that were right there behind the basketball court, right behind the goal. And on the front row, those cushioned seats, was a guy, and I said, gosh, that guy looks like Barry Switzer. And I said, I'm not sure. I don't know. Maybe it is. Barry Switzer was the head football coach at Oklahoma Sooners. He had won national championships with them. Went on to coach the Dallas Cowboys. Any Cowboy fans? Okay, no Cowboy fans. All right. He coached the Dallas Cowboys back when they were America's team, and they won a couple of Super Bowls with Barry Switzer. Hall of Fame coach. Looked like him. Wasn't sure. Said to a buddy of mine, is that who I think? I don't know. Well, at halftime, after the first half of the game, Jeff Capel, who was the assistant, he's still the assistant under Mike Krzyzewski there at Duke now, one of the assistant coaches. He came out, this guy who looked like Barry Switzer goes out onto the court. I thought, surely security's going to tackle him. He's running out there at halftime. And he catches Jeff Capel, and Jeff Capel waves at him, comes over and gives him a big hug. Jeff Capel had been the head coach, basketball coach at Oklahoma. It was Barry Switzer. I put 2 and 2. I'm not that dumb. I put 2 and 2 together. The disciples of Jesus Christ, when they came, the women early on, and then later the men, Peter leading the way with others, came and saw that the tomb was empty. They were utterly dismayed, didn't know what to think. And then the women had gotten a glimpse and a vision of angels telling them that indeed the tomb was empty because Jesus was alive. The empty tomb. One thing I want to tell you this morning is, I keep talking about this, and we got to get this. We got to really get this, church. We got to get it. We got to believe it. We got to put our hearts into it. Because as I said on Easter Sunday, for those of you who were here, and if you weren't here, this is what I said. We talk about in the church, we're so worried about whether the message is relevant today or not. We just worry. We got to come up with all kinds of stuff. We got to put pizza parties, and we got to have trips to this and that, Carowinds and the beach, and for our kids especially. And we got to make this fun and that fun. None of that's wrong. But we feel like we got to somehow make this relevant for today. Is it relevant? That's the question we keep asking. Is it relevant? Is what we're doing relevant? Well, C.S. Lewis put it this way. He said the question is whether it's true or not. That's the question. Is it true or not? Because he said if it's not true, then it's of no importance whatsoever. It's unimportant completely and totally. It's not important. Paul, the apostle, pretty much said the same thing in 1 Corinthians 15 in dealing with this thing that the Corinthian church began to believe that the dead can't be raised. That's an impossibility. Now, I know we think that those primitive people back in the they could believe anything. They were so dumb, they're so smart today. They're so dumb, they could believe anything. But they were wrestling with that. The ancient Greco-Roman world, they didn't believe in resurrection. They didn't believe the possibility of it. Anyone who claimed such a thing, they thought were idiots. Because it never had happened. They'd never seen it happen. I'm talking about somebody being raised and staying that way. Continuing to live on into eternity. Never happened before. Never seen it. Knew that when people died, they didn't have the scientific technology that we have today, but guess what? They were smart enough to know that when people died, they stayed dead. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure that out, right? But anyway, so Paul said basically to them, if it's not true, what the heck are we doing? What is the point? That's what he said. Why am I putting my life at risk every day for this if it's not true? If it's not true, let's quit. Forget it. Don't worry about it. But the question is it true? If it's not, it's not relevant at all. It's not even something we should bother with. But if it's true, brothers and sisters and dear friends, if it's true, then it can't be just sort of important. It can't be just kind of important. If it's true, it has to be of ultimate importance. And the one thing I want to tell you about the empty tomb, we can kind of, it's easy to dismiss all of this as, they just made this stuff up. And that's what a lot of so-called scholars do. They've already made their mind up before they even start to do any research or look at the evidence. They've already made their mind up that could not, what they said happened could not have happened. So therefore it didn't happen. So let's figure out and tell the people what really happened. 2,000 years removed from the actual event. I'm going to be in a position as this Harvard or Yale-trained scholar or Oxford-trained scholar to be able to tell you 2,000 years removed because I am such a genius what happened 2,000 years ago. Okay, anyway.